Welcome to Entrepreneur Voices, the IEC podcast, where entrepreneurs and business leaders share their insights and success stories. In today's episode, host Renae Oswald sits down with Rob Tietjen, a local BYU Idaho professor and successful entrepreneur. They'll explore the initial phases of entrepreneurship and discuss Rob's personal experiences. Let's get started.
Welcome to Entrepreneur Voices. I'm Renae Oswald, your host, and I'm here with Rob Tietjen. Hi, Rob. We're happy to have you.
It is great to be here.
Tell us a little bit about yourself so the listeners can get to know you.
Well, I am here. I'm from Rexburg, Idaho, all the way. Born and raised, survived the flood, lost my pink bicycle in it, and that was probably a good thing.
Yeah, I suspect.
I grew up here in Rexburg. I'm married. I have 10 children and almost 10 grandchildren in another 2 weeks.
Congratulations. That's the best, isn't it?
Very excited.
Yes. And what's your role right now? What are you doing in work?
I currently teach business up at BYU, Idaho. And so I teach principles of business strategy, small business management. Then we have a thing where we actually have the students where we let them run their own company. We give them money and say, go for it, and kind of help them, guide them on that process for the semester.
So you are well prepared by how to teach that course because you've had some life experience, I understand, in business.
I have had a little life experience, yeah.
Tell us about the beginning of your business that I understand is called Policy Tech.
Correct. Okay, so actually I should probably clarify that I never wanted to go into business. That was never a desire of mine. My goal, I love teaching, always have. But through various things that happened along the way, I ended up working in a hospital, and which is another thing I never wanted to do. But I loved it. I oversaw their marketing and their education, and as well as a lot of their compliance. And so while I was in charge of compliance, I wasn't in charge, but I was on the committee to help get the hospital compliant. I was put in charge of policies and procedures. While doing that, I realized this is really painful.
Yeah, because policies and procedures at that time resided in binders.
Oh, yeah. Do you remember those?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, huge binders.
Yeah, I'm a nurse by training, just so you have some understanding of my background. And so I remember back in the day where we went to the policies that were in multiple binders along the wall. And I can't imagine trying to upkeep those and keep them, new and fresh and like up to date. So go ahead.
I had a secretary that her full-time job was literally to just go around and change out policies and procedures in all those binders.
Yeah.
Because I think we had 17 of those huge D-ring binders in every department, okay? Because you had 35 departments or so.
Yeah, right.
And they all had to have the same set of binders, all had to have the same policies in them. And that's all she'd do all day was make photocopies of any new policy, go in, take out all the old ones, put in the new ones, change the table of contents if needed. It was just a nightmare, and then go
Seems very
file
inefficient.
archive the old ones. Yeah.
But that's all we knew back then. That's how we did things.
And if you had it, you were very organized. It was, But from a nurse's standpoint, it was ridiculous because when did you actually go open the binders?
Yeah, it was very hard. And thankfully, there were other people that knew how to do things on the floor.
Right.
That's who I went and
So you
asked.
just talked to them.
Absolutely.
You wouldn't even look at the binders.
Exactly.
Yeah, we actually did a test where we set one of the binders out and we said, okay, you have 1 minute and you need to find this policy. And the accreditation body said they need to be able to find it within 30 seconds. And so they're like, okay. And they go through, and the time we did it, they never found it.
Yeah.
And we're like, this is crazy. So it was, So anyway, so finally realizing, okay, these employees aren't actually looking at these policies and procedures. They can't find them. Not only that, but they need to sign off on them and say that they've read them. And that was a nightmare because you had to stick them up on the wall and say, okay, everybody on the shift, go and sign off that you read this policy. Do you remember that?
I actually remember that, yes.
The wall of pain.
Yes.
But they're hoping to try to get everybody. And then as soon as they think they've got everybody, because some of the nurses are only working, once a month. So we'd actually, it was really hard to capture everybody. And then once you did, what do you do with it? You take those and they're supposed to go back to HR and everybody's file and show that they read these things. So that means you need to make a ton of copies of every single one with everybody's names. And it was just ridiculous. It wasn't possible. So I called up my brother and I said, hey, you build software. How'd you like to build me some software to help us create a way that people could easily search and find policies and procedures?
And when was this? Like about what time?
That would have been in 2000. actually, when I first contacted him, I think was probably about 99,
so
98.
The whole idea of computer, like it still wasn't, the internet wasn't in existence.
Yeah, exactly.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And so he's like, well, how much does it pay? And I said, well, you're my brother.
It's not going to pay anything.
Exactly. And he didn't laugh.
Yeah, no, I suspect not. Because that sounds like a lot of time and energy to do this.
To build something like that.
Yeah.
So fortunately, the CNO at the time, he says, look, I'll help. We'll get the budget for this. And so we weren't able to do very much, but my brother's like, yeah, that'd be a cool thing to say we did, So he built it, and it was just on a CD.
And you intended it for this one facility.
Exactly.
Okay.
So he built it, put it on a CD, and it was a CD that we would then have to just make copies of the CD and go put them in all the departments, but they could put it in the computer and search because it was before the internet.
Sure.
Right? And it worked. I mean, it was tons better than what we had because they could just search quickly, see the procedure, and go do it. But it became very clear quickly that it wasn't enough. There was a lot more that we needed to do to be able to track who read them, signed off on them, all those types of things. And it was a pain to have to keep doing all these CDs. So I kept bugging him, hey, can we do this? Can we do this? And he's like, well, how much are you paying? And it's like, yeah, I don't have any more money, So it never happened. But several years later, I had another brother who said, hey, if I were to make this, if we were to program this, you keep saying that if we did it for your facility, probably lots of places would want this. I was like, yeah, everybody has this problem. And he said, all right, I'll tell you what, I'm single. I'm living at home and I don't have any, and so he's
my overhead is pretty low.
Exactly. And he says, and I'm kind of tired of working on the project I'm on. So he said, I'll do it.
Wow.
And so I said, great. So every day I'd go over to his house in the morning, my parents' house. He was still living with my parents. I probably shouldn't have brought that up. But I'd go over in the morning and we'd spend an hour and just kind of go through, okay, here's what it needs to do. Here's what I want it to happen. And then he'd spend the whole day working on it. And then at night I'd go back and I'd say, no, that's not what I meant.
Yeah.
But, no, I'm just kidding. But
well, probably you did. Yeah.
But he was actually really good. He was a very good designer, very good. He'd ask me lots of good questions, bring, mock-ups to me and say, okay, are you thinking this? Before he'd go working on this thing. And so, but we worked on that thing every day for a year.
Wow.
And,
did you guys realize what the end game was here? Was it mostly just to get your facility in line and didn't really understand how this could be applied, or did you hope?
All I cared about was getting our facility.
Yeah.
That's all I really cared about.
Yeah.
I'm not an entrepreneur. I could have cared less about business. I was just like, I just want this for my facility.
Yeah.
My brother, on the other hand, is like, well, we're going to make some money off of this.
Okay.
And
He could see that vision.
Well, I'll help with that. Anyway, so we got it done. And his goal, by the way, he said to me, he says, hey, let's build that thing you're talking about so we can make some quick money.
Oh, quick money.
Yeah. That was a running
year
joke
later.
For about 7 years. So
Yeah.
So a year later, he actually put his foot down and said, hey, I'm done. You get this thing out there. The problem with me is I'm a perfectionist and it's got to be perfect. Mm-hmm. And I'd not heard Mark Zuckerberg's comment about, hey, no, you never wait for it to be perfect.
Yeah,
you just get it out there, minimum viable product as fast as you can. And
and also I will say, being a nurse and part of the consumer that you were then serving, we're a critical bunch.
Right.
We want things to be done really
right.
well. Yes.
You can't take any risks.
Right.
It has to be done right. So, yeah. So I was pushing for some pretty hefty features, and he finally said, no, you get this on the market, you start making some sales, then we'll talk. Uh-huh. So I did, and I finally, we put it on the market, and within 24 hours, we already had a sale. $4,000.
Wow.
We were so excited.
I bet you were, because that was like proof of product.
Exactly.
Yeah.
4,000, 365 days, do the math,
Oh, yeah. We're going to be rolling in it.
We just made, a couple $1 million, and so we were so excited. And then the next day, the guy charged back all of the cards that he used to pay for it.
Oh, no.
And we get a call from the bank going, what in the world are you doing? We're like, what do you mean? What are you doing? This is a scam. You let this guy, you took all his cards and everything. We didn't know. We never run a business before.
Oh, my goodness.
So the bank shut us down.
Oh, no way.
Yeah. And they said, no, you're not going to, said from now on, any purchases you get, we're going to hold those in the bank.
Oh, my gosh.
And I'm like, no, we need that money for marketing. We can't,
right.
and so it was tough. So for the next 6 months, they're holding on to all our money.
No.
Yeah. Which wasn't a lot because this guy timed it just perfectly, got the scam, everything went great for him. Our next sale was not for another month, and it was $600.
Wow.
And that didn't sound so good. $600 a month is not, and so.
How were you charging? Were you charging per CD or what were you doing at this point?
So at that point, we'd actually made it to where it actually worked on a server.
Okay.
And so they would install it on their server. We'd email, or we might send them a CD with the installation. But it was getting to the point where we could send that online.
Okay.
Send them a key and they could go download it. So.
Got it.
So yeah, he definitely made it more web-based. In fact, it was. No, I guess it wasn't web-based yet. It was still server-based at that point in time. Anyway, so it was very slow. Another month, $600. Another month, $600. So normally by that point, you're like, okay, this is not worth doing if this is going to keep going like this.
And what were you doing around marketing at this point? Were you actually out there peddling this?
No, we were just doing pay-per-click ads. And so anybody who went out and searched for policy and procedure management software, they'd find us because we were the only guys out there.
There wasn't anybody else doing this.
And so a lot of people were saying, hey, there's got to be a better way. And they started searching, and so they'd find us.
Healthcare wasn't the only one that had a bunch of binders.
It was not.
And were you specifically looking for healthcare, or were you anyone?
Yeah, we were just anyone. I definitely understood healthcare better, so I could speak to those, their issues and problems. But the more we got talking to other customers, we realized, oh no, everybody's got the same problem.
Yeah.
It's the same exact issues. So some are a little higher need. Healthcare, definitely very high regulatory environment. Banks, very high regulatory environment. Biggest one, which kind of cracked us up, was casinos.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
We had so many casinos. We're like, why?
Yeah.
Why do you need this? Like, are you kidding? Nobody gets regulated more than we do. And I was like,
well,
I can kind of see that.
But maybe nuclear energy, that could be in there.
That's true. We did have some of those. And so, yeah, so we would have probably given up, except that we had so many clients coming in. They just weren't buying. We're like, what is the deal? They were but they'd come in, they're so interested, and they were huge customers. Some of them were, like right out of the gate, we're talking to Consumer Reports. I don't know if you remember them.
Wow, yeah.
They're kind of gone now, but there was some pretty big companies that we were talking to. We had a huge bank, one of the largest banks in the world. We had an oil company. What's that oil company? Saudi Aramco, which is like the largest oil company in the world. These guys were coming out of nowhere.
And were you prepared to do this in different languages?
No.
Yeah.
No, we weren't. And so, but that was okay. They said, we just need it for our English division, et cetera. And so we're talking to these people, but nobody's buying. And so that was really frustrating. What are we doing wrong? I didn't understand the buying cycle for large companies. They take a long time.
Oh, yeah, right.
So it's nothing about the software. To get those
POs or whatever,
exactly.
Yeah.
So by the end of the year, we actually saw, okay, money's starting to come in.
And your brother wasn't going to abandon you at this time because now he could see
he was getting a paycheck. Coming. Exactly.
Okay, good.
And so we did that. We actually hired a programmer down in South America who was actually helping us do some things that we weren't quite sure how to do, and he was super cheap.
Yeah, good.
So we did that for a while. We were very blessed to have him. And then we ended up, what happened after that? Anyway, the next year, things really started to get going, and we started to pull on some good contracts. One of our biggest ones was a hospital, and they actually were ready to go. And they said, so we love this, but we needed to do this, this, and this. And I was like, I'm the sales guy, so. Okay, sure.
Yeah, we'll
that.
make it happen. My brother was doing it for me just a year ago, so why can't we do that for you?
He was not happy. He was very upset. He's like, we can't do that. And so, well, I already told him we were going to. So,
can I ask you a question?
Yeah,
as you started rolling some of these things out, were they finding bugs? It wasn't working.
Oh yeah.
So how did you handle the fact that you didn't get to roll it out in a perfect condition?
Right.
What were you doing then with your customers?
So this one, for example, they wanted us to redo this whole thing completely to be web-based. I said, we'll do it, but it's got to be web-based. And like, okay, can we do it in 3 months? Yeah, we can do it in 3 months. Yeah, no. I had to rebuild the whole software, and that typically would take about a year.
Oh my gosh.
But I said yes, and my brother said, fine. Okay, you said we'll do what we can. So for a year, I got to hear screaming.
From him or from the
client?
I bet.
Customer.
Waiting.
Every day, call me up and yell at me. What's
Where
this?
is
And that's
this
not
at?
working. And where's this? And, and it was just back and forth.
Well, we used to joke, not necessarily about Policy Tech, but about some software that it works broke.
Right.
That was the joke. That it works broke.
Right.
So we just made do with what we could.
Right.
Yeah. And then we sorted out the bugs.
Yeah. So it was a big pain. And
did you have a team by now? Like, were you bringing other people on?
So we had, maybe I should back up a little bit. So after about a year and a half, it became clear that I was going to need to leave the hospital to run this business. I thought you could just sell it on the side, and you can't. I had to actually go run a business.
I imagine the facility that you were leaving was kind of like, hey, we have some stock. I mean, this is kind of our thing. Like, you did this for us.
The good news is we actually saw it coming. So we said, hey, we're not going to charge the facility. And so we didn't charge anything
so it's just kind of like, you're the test.
Exactly. And they understood, and they're like, that's fine. We're okay. So,
that was good.
And we wrote something up. So, but then when I left, that was a really sad day because I loved it at the hospital, loved the people and everything. But it became very clear. I received clear direction from the Lord. This is what I'm supposed to do. And so, and I went kicking and screaming. So I was like, I don't know how to run a business. I don't, but I loved it.
So what'd you do? Did you get help? Like, did people advise you?
So yes, definitely. Yeah. In fact, my first mentor, I actually wanted him to be the president. But in the end, I got this really strong feeling that I was supposed to do it. And I had to go back to him and say, hey, I know you were going to do this. And he goes, no, it's okay. I actually just 2 days ago, I had the exact same feeling. You're supposed to do this. And I was like, oh, good.
Good. Yeah, this is real.
Yeah. And then I said, well, I need your help because I have no idea what I'm doing. And so he actually stayed on as a mentor for the first 6 months and just helped me, taught me all the principles that he could. He'd drive up from Utah, spend a week with us in the basement. I should have mentioned that we started this in the basement. That's where all good software companies start.
Either that or the garage.
It actually was the garage.
Okay.
That I had converted for my mom into part of the basement. So we did both.
Yes, you did. Yes.
So he would come and work with us there, and I just learned so much from him. He was a great mentor. I also had the wonderful wisdom of one of my interns. His name is Scott Johnson. He actually works at the city here in Rexburg. He actually said, hey, you should get a board. I was like, what would I do with a board? And he said, you should just do it. And he went and he lined up a board for me. And I'll tell you, that was one of the wisest decisions. Those men, all of them had amazing backgrounds in the software industry as well as in law and finance. And so we'd meet, every so often and just try to say, okay, here's the problems we're dealing with. And they'd say, well, have you thought about this or that? And it just helped a ton.
It sounds a lot like what maybe we consider mastermind groups now.
Yes.
Like you had your own little mastermind group around your business.
Exactly. Yeah, I always recommend getting a board. It also holds you more accountable, makes you make wiser decisions because you have to go and tell somebody about it. So yeah. So that worked out perfectly. So that's kind of where it went, and then it just got crazier and crazier. We did pull on employees. We pulled on an investor. I never wanted to get an investor. I don't know why.
Before you go on to your investor, I'm curious to know, especially from your mentor, like at this point, because it sounds a little bit, and correct me if I'm wrong, like you were throwing spaghetti on the wall and hoping that it sticks then just kind of going through that process. Did you realize at some point before you brought on an investor, like there are key metrics that we need to be tracking here, sales and percentages and all of that kind of stuff. When did key performance indicators come into your, the way that you did business?
So I was very fortunate in that I had worked in the business world before. A hospital tracks all of those things very dutifully.
Yes, they do.
They have to.
Yes.
And so because of that, I probably came in at a little higher level than a lot of people who start companies, to where I started out saying, okay, we need policies and procedures.
Yeah, right.
We need indicators. We need to be watching our dashboard. We need to see where are we lacking. And so we had set goals. We had very clear indicators. We had them on spreadsheets. We'd show them in staff meeting every week. We understood the importance of having regular meetings with our staff.
Okay.
And so I think I'm really grateful that I went through and had a corporate job for a while. I don't know if you call hospital corporate, but very, regimented prescriptions. And so I have a lot of students and others who come to me and say, oh, I just want to go start this. I was like, well, maybe you should go actually work in a real business for a little while.
Yeah.
See what some of those pain points are.
Yeah. And look at how the organization has helped the business become successful by being organized.
Right. Exactly. So we did. We tracked those and we would show them to the staff every week and just say, okay, here's where we are. What's the reason? And we try to work around those. And it was we had a good system that way. So.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm absolutely fascinated and I want to hear more about your story, but we're going to take a quick break to hear a sponsor message.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Hey, listeners. We hope you're enjoying today's episode of Entrepreneur Voices. This episode is brought to you by Oswald Service and Repair, the trusted name in automotive repair and service since 1939. Learn more about how Oswald Service and Repair can keep your car happy and healthy at oswaldserviceinc.com.
Okay, you talked a little bit about key performance indicators, so you kind of knew where you were at, and you were going into the story about bringing on an outside investor. So let's talk about that.
Yeah, that's probably one of the things my students most startups. I do consulting for startups as well, and they're always asking me, how do I get an investor?
Yeah.
And
because they feel like they need money.
Exactly. And they do. It's really not a bad practice. I know some try to avoid it, and I did. But I've realized since that it's actually another good thing, kind of like your board, is to have somebody who you're accountable to. And if you can actually convince someone to invest in your company, then there's a lot higher chance it's going to succeed. Because you can always convince yourself this is a great idea. Right? But it's always emotional. And so you need to be able to convince somebody else to put down some hard dollars. If you can convince them to do that, then okay, we're on the right track. Whether or not you need the money, most of the time you do anyway. But in my case, we were to a point where we were actually starting to make money. So I'm like, I don't think I really need an investor.
Yeah.
And in this particular situation, I just had a friend that I was talking to, and he said, hey, I know a guy, and if he was interested, would you be willing to talk to him? And I was like, I don't know. I really don't know if I want to pull an investor, but I finally agreed, okay, I'll go talk to him. So I went and talked to him, and he comes in and he sits behind his desk and he's like, so what's the deal with this? Why do you need my money? And I was like, actually, I don't really need your money. I don't think
Why are we talking?
Exactly. And he's like, what? And I said, yeah, I mean, we're doing really good. We've gotten this much income, or things are going well. And I just don't think I'd really rather not have to do that. And I don't think we need it. So that's the number one strategy if you want to get an investor.
Act hard to get. Okay, got it.
I wasn't planning on that or meaning to, but instantly the conversation changed completely to, well, wait a minute. No,
how can I be a part of this?
You do understand that you need an investor. And I was like, yeah, but do I really? No, let me explain. And so he's sitting there trying to convince me that I need an investor and that I need his money. And so I was like, well, let me think about it. So I went home and we talked. Well, I was like, we really do need more people. We really do need some, okay, if we're going to scale this. Okay. So I went back to him and said, all right, I guess we'll take your money. And he's like, oh, that was a wise decision.
So it was kind of backwards.
Wait, what do you do?
Oh, he didn't even know?
He didn't know what I did.
No way.
Yeah. So
just by playing hard to get, you got him hooked.
Yeah. Okay. I'm not saying to do that, but it was just happened to be that way. So.
Yeah. And so did he take a portion of your business then to be able to?
Yes.
And what did that look like? Are you willing to share that?
Yeah, no problem. So basically we had it set up to where we said, okay, if you give this initial investment, then he would get 25% of the company, which seems like a lot, right? But at the same time, without that, we would have never gotten to where we did, because we really did need that to scale. I learned later, I realized, no, we needed that.
So the 75% that was left over was sufficient to be able to meet all of your dreams, your brother's dreams, because the business was scaling at the rate it was. Okay.
Yeah, our dreams were not very big. So
right, you didn't want to be an entrepreneur. Here you are.
My brother made the comment. He says, think if they gave us $500,000, somebody's going to buy this from us for $500,000.
We'll be rich.
And we told that story to the board later, and they're like, hey, let me make your dreams come true. Let's just take care of this right now. I'll buy it from you for $500,000.
No, our dreams have changed. Right.
But no, it's really true, though. We worry so much about giving up equity, and we need to stop thinking that way. We need to start thinking about how can I use this to bless everybody's lives. And I'm really grateful. The equity gave to our board, to the investor. They were good people, and they've done great things with it. And so I don't begrudge any of that. I think it's fantastic.
Well, and I would say, too, the other lives there that were changed were the employees that you were able to bring on. And you know, I think about a story. My husband and I own automotive repair. And when my husband graduated from high school and was going to work for his dad, and we were looking to get married, he said, this business will not support 2 families on the income that you guys are wanting to make. So my husband left the business for 14 years. And now we have, you know, I don't know, a dozen employees or maybe more, and looking to expand. And what an opportunity you had then to support people, give them a good wage, give them a good living, and help their families.
It was one time I remember we actually had a company picnic type thing. And, you know, I can't remember how many employees we had at that time, like 50 or 60. But when they came to the picnic, all the families were invited, you know, and you don't really think about that. And when they brought all their families, we're talking hundreds of people there.
Wow.
And I was just like blown away thinking,
these
people are relying on us,
you
know, but
you better have your crap together.
Exactly. But we're able to provide jobs because a lot of them really wanted to be back here in Idaho, but there just wasn't anything. And to think that we're providing for them, it was just amazing. And now that's expanded to thousands, and it's a pretty cool thing. So
I'm going to take you back just a little bit, because I find that whole idea of that minimum viable product kind of, you know, development fascinating, especially for new entrepreneurs. They have an idea, they have a concept. What did that look like for you? Do you have advice for those people who are going forward, you know, to be able to validate that thing that they hope that somebody else will want? What advice do you have for people that are in that situation?
Yeah. So anytime I'm talking to an entrepreneur, the first thing I say is you need to validate your product. You need to validate that there's really demand. Why waste a ton of time, you know, even building this thing till you know that people want it? And so that's a hard thing to do. And I'll just, I'll share an example. So I had one young man who came to me and he said, hey, I've got this idea for an app, and it's going to be really cool. It's going to help, you know, I'm not going to go into what it was
but everybody's going to want it.
But everybody's going to want this. And in my mind, I thought, this is never going to work. Okay. I did not see the vision.
Yeah.
But I learned this concept from a therapist once. It says, you need to let reality kill their dreams. Okay. You don't have to tell them you're wrong. Let reality kill their dreams. So I was like, we'll just let reality. So I said, look, if you really want to know if this thing's going to be successful, then the best way to do that is to do pre-orders. Okay. And you can do surveys, you can do focus groups, but most of the time they're going to tell you what you want to hear. You need to go and actually make sales, right?
Outside of your family.
Exactly. And I was fortunate with ours because we actually did it. We knew what we needed because I was the guy that needed it. For the organization, yeah. Right? And so mine's a little bit different than most entrepreneurs because I was building it to fill a need. And that's always the best way, obviously. If it's a need that you need and you can fill, and that wherever you're at is like, yeah, we'd pay for this, you know, whatever. And then you can start getting some others to do it, but you're not having to live off of that, then that's the best way. But if you can't, then pre-orders is the best way to go. The second best way is go and actually make some sales before you've made the thing, before you've even made a minimum viable product. And so I said, you should go get some pre-orders. And he goes, well, how do I make pre-orders? This is an app. Like, how do I sell it to them before I have it, you know? And I don't even have something to show them. I don't have a prototype. So I showed him, look, you can make mock-ups where you explain, show what it is, and then write down exactly what it's going to do.
Draw a little picture.
Exactly. You know, whatever you have to do. And now there's cool tools. You can just tell AI, hey, make it look like this.
Yeah, exactly.
But so he did. And I said, okay, now you need a contract. And you go to them and say, hey, look, if I make this and it does these things, then do you agree? Do you sign and commit that you would pay for a subscription to this for the next year? Okay.
This was the early stages of crowdfunding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So he's like, okay. So he takes this, we worked this contract out and tried to make it as legal as possible. So he had some teeth to say, no, you agreed, you said you would pay for this. Okay. And then he took it out and I sent him off and said, okay, good luck. Next day he comes back and I said, so how did it go? And he goes, well, I was only able to do it for about 2 hours. I was like, 2 hours? Yeah, you get anything at this, because you need to call a bunch of companies and actually get them. These were business contracts. They weren't like just customers, And so I said, okay, cool. Well, what happened? He goes, well, I was only able to get like 6 contracts. I got about 150,000. Do you think that's enough?
What?
I was, same thing. I was just blown away. I was like, what do you...
Wait a minute.
150,000 what?
$150?
Exactly.
What are you talking about?
Yeah, no, I've got, and so he starts showing me these contracts.
No way.
$150,000 of signed contracts.
So he showed you, didn't he?
He killed my dream.
Oh
Reality killed my dream.
Right. Okay? It was your dream.
I was like stunned. And then he's like, yeah. And they started telling me all this stuff. And I said, hey, can I capture that? And could we put that? Because I thought maybe we could put it on our testimonial page. And he shows me these testimonials. And he's just like, I've been dying for something like this. I would totally pay. That's not even enough. You should be charging more. Like, it was just like,
okay, then.
Oh, wow. Okay. And so can you imagine, you take that to an investor and say, look, I have these signed agreements. You give me 150,000. I already have people who are going to give us back the 150,000.
Yeah.
So easy. And the value of your company just went up to where you can say, I'm only going to give you 10% of my company because I already have all these.
Sounds like Shark Tank.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's my number one suggestion is that you need to go get pre-orders. Prove that people are really willing to put their money to it.
Yeah.
I had another student who he actually created, what do you call it? A Facebook ad where he would actually go and he just ran it for $25 for a week. But on the Facebook ad, it just explained what is another app, what his app was and everything. And then he had websites that it would take him to links and it would describe it. And then there would be a buy now. And then they'd click the buy now and it would then say, oh, I'm sorry, we don't have this yet. But if you're interested, then leave your name and we'll contact you. Okay. But that way he could prove that, these people want it. Right. And another one stood outside of a store and just asked people as they came and said, hey, do you want this? I said, yes. And he says, okay, give me $20 and I'll give you the product. They give him the $20 and he goes, well, I actually don't have the finished product. I'm going to give you $20 back, but I just needed to know for sure. And so he found out 43% of people who gave him the $20. They wanted that product. And so that got him the investor. Both of these guys got investors just like that because totally.
They were able to prove it.
Exactly.
Yeah. Fascinating.
So.
Well, what do you think, over your journey? I guess we don't know the end of your story. So what happened with Policy Tech? Did it crash and burn?
Crashed and burned. Total crash and burn.
What happened with it?
No, it actually grew tremendously. We pulled on some of the largest customers in the world. I had no idea to what extent. Like you would assume that the large Fortune 100 companies that they've got it nailed by now.
I worked for one of those big places, and guess what we used for our policy manager?
Did you use?
Policy Tech.
Oh, really?
Imagine how that is. Yeah. So I do know that it continued to grow and made it much easier to be able to find policies and sign them off and do all of the things that we were supposed to do.
Right. Yeah, we added a lot of features to create their policies, review, approve, all of the things that are part of that system. And so that actually grew. We ended up pulling on just some of the, like I said, largest companies, and we ended up having some of those come to us, a lot of Fortune 100 companies, and they came to us and said, okay, we're good, but now we need it to be in other languages.
Yeah.
Because we want to roll this out to all of our divisions across the world.
How did you manage all that growth?
That was a nightmare.
Yeah,
we had a long discussion about that. But our vision was we wanted to be the number one world provider of this. And so if you're going to be the number one world provider of policy management software, then that means you're going to have to translate it.
Yeah, right.
I had some amazing developers who actually figured out, okay, here's what we need to do. And we created a pretty slick way of doing it for fairly less painful than most ways you go about it. And so we're able to roll that out. And eventually then that caught the attention where we had someone approach us and ask us to buy the company. I had...
At this time, about how many employees do you think you had?
We had about 70 employees at that time. Yeah, we'd been in business for about 10 years.
Okay.
And I don't know why, things were going great, but for some reason I just had the feeling it's time. And so the timing of it was interesting. And we were just, we had started looking, but then these guys just approached us and we're like, okay. And fortunately, they were amazing, good people. They had some other compliance software that just went along with our software. And the goal was to try to get those to merge together and to make a bigger solution. Yeah. And so
a one-stop shop for some of that stuff. Yeah.
So we had some equity investors that actually bought 4 different companies and merged us all into one company.
Got it.
And so I stayed on as the vice president over all the software development for all the companies. And that was a fantastic experience. I got to do way too much travel.
Yeah.
I don't enjoy travel, but now my team wasn't just here. I now had to travel and go see my other teams in other areas and over in Washington and North Carolina, and it was just crazy. So, but we had the company then grew. The new company was called Navex Global. That was the name of the company, and it is now probably the largest compliance software in the whole world. And
do you recognize your product anymore? Has it changed so much?
No, a major change happened when I was still there, and so I haven't seen a huge change since then. Like it still looks fairly familiar, but they've definitely added a ton more features, a ton more reports. Everybody wants reports. Oh, we want this report, this report. So
all this data.
So they've been doing a lot to increase the value of it, but it's...
I think everybody's burning question that's probably listening, watching is, did your brother get to move out of your parents' house?
He did. He did.
I'm so glad to hear that.
He finally found that wife.
You made up for that whole year that you took of his life.
He better not complain.
How about your other brother? Was he sad that he was not still a part of it?
No, he was part of it.
Oh, he still was. Okay, great.
Yeah, a whole nother part of this story. I always tell people, never go into business with your family. I had 6 brothers, a brother-in-law, a sister, and my father. They're all working for the company.
Oh, my goodness. So it seems to work out okay.
They were amazing programmers. All of them, most of them got into programming or else into IT, and they all played critical roles. It's kind of funny, when we sold the company, one of their biggest issues, they said, look, we're really worried about if we have to let one of your brothers go. And I told them, I said, look, I don't care who you let go. It would kill me.
Yeah.
We were very close, very tight-knit, the whole company. And I said, but I'll also say, I think it would be really dumb to let one of them go. And fortunately, my vice president, who used to be the vice president of Micron, and before that, he was vice president of Ancestry.com, he jumped up and he's like, no, you do not want to let any of the Tietjens go.
They're critical to this.
Exactly. But I'm so grateful for my family. We are very blessed because they're all very humble, very helpful. I was horrible because I kind of always try to keep them a little bit. I didn't ever want it to look like there was nepotism.
Yeah,
so
right.
They didn't get paid as much. They didn't get the new equipment and all that stuff. And they still hate me to this day, I think, for it. But all of them, since the new company took over, they didn't have those constraints. And all of them rose to the top of their positions. They all were promoted. One of them actually was flown out to go talk to all of these companies because they said the investors wanted them to talk to all their portfolio companies and
that's great.
To teach them how they should be doing things. And so I was just very blessed with.
Well, this podcast is called Entrepreneur Voices. So you are a voice of an entrepreneur, but you are talking to potential entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs that are out there. What kind of advice, now that you've had this experience and you're teaching about these things now, what's the key advice that you would feel would be important for people to hear at this stage?
I think, first of all, don't doubt what you can do. I definitely was not prepared at all. And every entrepreneur you talk to in that first business, they're not prepared. They have no clue. Just do it, okay? But definitely there's risk, and you've got to mitigate the risk. You can do that with investors. You can do that with getting those pre-orders, proving that there's demand. One of the other things I would suggest I highly focused on, and my mentor actually taught me this, was that you need to figure out your finances. You need to get a budget and a pro forma, and you need to know exactly where every dollar is going to be going. and you need to watch that every day. And I was like, why would I look at it every day? That's ridiculous. Nothing's going to change in one day. I was amazed. Every day I look and say, oh yeah, we didn't spend money on this. We could use that for this. Or we spent too much here. We need to pull back here. Following that very closely, because most of the ones that I've talked to that have failed, because they weren't watching. They were not watching their finances.
They're living on hope.
Exactly. I had one that I was working with. Fantastic. Things were going pretty well. And then one day he's like, oh, I just asked him, so how much money do you have in the bank? And he goes and looks. He's like, I don't have any in the bank. It's like, what do you mean? Yeah, you don't have any money. Well, we have like 5,000. It's like, wait, you have to pay payroll on Monday.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, you don't have any money. You have to shut down today. It's
wow.
Like, but it's like, you don't have a choice. You have to shut down, because he just wasn't watching. And it was a really sad day. And I see that happen over and over again. So make sure you're really watching those numbers closely, watching your KPIs closely. What's happening? Are their customers happy? Are they not happy? Do you got lots of bugs? What's going on in your company? And so if you're tracking those things, making sure that your product is actually going to make money, doing a good analysis of how much is it costing you? What's your margins? Are you actually, pulling through? What can I do to make those margins better? It really is important to understand that side of it. So if you don't understand just basic accounting, it'd be very wise to go and learn those principles.
Yeah. I love that advice, because I think that is applicable to every business, whether you're doing nails in a nail salon or whether you're creating policy tech or whatever that is. Your business is not too small or too large to make sure you're paying attention to these details. And if you want to be viable, you've got to have some money in the bank to be able to pay yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then the last thing I'd just recommend is that you got to have policies and procedures. And I'm not just saying that because that's what I did. But the reality is, if you want a strong culture, then you need to be very clear on what everybody needs to do and why. Okay. And you need to make that very clear, have it all mapped out. The more that you can communicate what your hopes are, how they're supposed to do their jobs, every single step, the better they're going to feel inside and the more secure. And they're going to say, okay, this is how we solve things. And if you did a procedure wrong, if you wrote one that's bad, great. If everybody's doing it, you'll all quickly find out that's not a good idea and get that changed. And so,
it doesn't have to be written in stone. These are not written on stone tablets.
Exactly.
We can change those and
but they need to be written and they need to be communicated. If people aren't reading them, there's no point in having them. So you need to make sure that there's some way to track, that they actually are following those, so they understand them. So
great advice. Well, Rob, thank you so much for all of your wisdom today. And it's been fun to hear your story and kind of go along the journey with you to see how this turned out. So we're really grateful that your brother found that wife. He's moved out of your parents. That it's all been successful, and you're moved on to do bigger and better things and affect more lives. So thank you so much.
You're most welcome. Thank you.
Appreciate your time today.
You bet. I'll see you.
Thank you for tuning into this episode of Entrepreneur Voices. We hope you gained valuable insights from Rob Tietjen's entrepreneurial journey. Be sure to join us next time as we welcome market research expert Will Jensen, who currently works as an economist at the Idaho National Laboratory. Until then, stay inspired. And thanks for being a part of our community.